All right, Chris, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Kirby, how's it going?
Good, good. It's great to have you here, man. I'm super excited about this topic. I've been really kind of honing in and diving in deep on short-term rental automation recently, just in my business in general, and just trying to figure out all the different ways to make the process easier, because it can be intensive if you're not smart about the way you manage it. So just some background for people who are listening. So Chris is somebody who left his job in 2016 and started working in the short-term rental industry. And he's currently the CEO of Turnify, which is formerly TidyHost. And it's an app that automates one of the biggest headaches for short-term rental hosts, which is the cleaning process between guests. So Turnify's motto is the closest thing to an Airbnb cleaning itself, which sounds amazing to me, because it's, especially right now in the environment we've been in for the last year, cleanings are one of the most important things to guests, and it's also one of the hardest things for hosts. So I'm excited to learn more about Turnify and how it could potentially fit into a host's repertoire of automated softwares. So first off, though, I'd love to hear your background, how you got into short-term rentals.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on to begin with. I'm a fan of your podcast. I've listened to probably dozens at this point. But, I think for me, my background pre-Turnify would be, I spent a lot of time in sales, a lot of time in software sales, mainly payroll, HRIS, some project management. I really had sort of a breadth of experience on that side of the house. I lived all over the country before that. As soon as I left Temple University in Philly, I lived in Atlanta and Portland and Pittsburgh and Scranton and all of these places. And at one point I said, I got to go home. And, so I moved back to Philly and worked, continued corporate sort of sales roles for a while. And Turnify came about as sort of a napkin idea, and it's sort of that cliche. This is how things started. I always loved the real estate side of the house. I was a licensed realtor for a while. All throughout college, I basically paid my tuition as a leasing agent, right? So it was a hustle. I mean, I would tour apartments all day, get leases signed, and then at night I would go to a bar and work as a bouncer until 2 a.m., wake up, go to class, and do all this all over again. So it was always, my life has always been 100 miles an hour. And then Turnify came up when Airbnb was still sort of very nomadic, right? So the cool part about Airbnb circa 2015 was, it was all about, you could go and crash on Janie's couch for $25 a night in Utah with your backpack, and maybe Janie's cat took a nap on you, and that was cool, Yeah. It's sort of the pure form of Airbnb, and Turnify sort of came about then. And now today, more than 5 years later, we're here.
Yeah, cool. So it was 2016, I believe, right? You left your corporate job and started the first version of Turnify, right?
Yeah, 2016, and that decision, I see this on a lot of forums. It's a tough decision to leave the stability of your corporate life, depending on the nature of your responsibilities and your lifestyle and things like that. I mean, that for me, I actually recorded that day. I still have the recording from 5 years ago, and I'm just pale. I had given my notice at my corporate job, and I'm pale. And I said, I'm scared, and as much planning as you can do, things are always going to happen, but that leap is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. I'm the end of this month, I'm leaving the job that I've had for the last 3 years. So I got out of the Army in 2011, was so ready to get into real estate investing, jumped in full time and did it for like 6 years, just full time. That's it. That was my only source of income. And then there's a nonprofit I was super passionate about that I joined the management team of. And so I've been doing that in addition to my real estate business. But it was always a short-term thing that I just wanted to contribute and then go back to my business. And So that's what I'm doing at the end of this month. And it's still that, I mean, I've done it before. I've been, an entrepreneur for a long time, but that security, walking away from that paycheck for some reason, there's always, no matter how prepared you are, I think people will always have that feeling. So that's, yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and you're going the other way now, right? So you have a job that's stable and you kind of go and someone else kind of supports you in return for the work that you provide them. Mm-hmm. And now you're going the other way where not only do you have to provide that stability in your own inner circle, but maybe for hundreds of others in the future.
Yeah.
So I've been there and I understand it, and it's a mind game,
Yeah, that's for sure. So I want to talk about that time period then. So did you own some short-term rentals before that? What was your experience, and did you leave your job with the understanding you were going to start this tech platform to support short-term rentals, or was it just kind of like, I want to get into this space and we'll figure it out?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into it. Again, I have like the most cliche, this is how I started this story, but it's true. I mean, my brother was one of the first big commercial arbitragers in the city of Philadelphia at the time. In 2015, for someone to go and rent 30 apartments and then re-rent them on Airbnb, at that point, the big commercial developers and management companies didn't really know that the ins and outs of arbitrage. I don't even think arbitrage was in their leases. They have all of those clauses now.
Yeah. Can you explain it for somebody who doesn't know that term?
Yeah, of course. So arbitrage would be the act of going and securing a lease, right? Just like if you were going to go lease an apartment and live there. But instead of you living there as your primary residence, you would then relist that apartment on Airbnb. And really the goal would be for your average nightly rate to outrun your overhead and your rent and utilities, to which that would produce your net profit. A lot of operators do this at scale. I mean, some of these guys have 5,000 leases.
Wow.
Some will master lease. Some properties that we serve, it's a whole building of 70 units. That's now an apart hotel. That's on a master lease. So it's pretty popular.
I see. So your brother was one of the first ones in Philly to do this, and so how did that play out?
Yeah, so he sort of mentioned to me at dinner one night that it was great. He loved everything about it, except for the fact that the only folks that had the sort of technical know-how to complete the cleanings in between were sort of these local mom and pop residential cleaning companies. And they were really great at cleaning, but it's a different style of cleaning. I mean, they were used to walking into a house where there's people's belongings everywhere, and they're going to, clean a kitchen just so the kids can come back in and mess it up again. Meanwhile, now we have to tuck beds like a Christmas gift, and we have to make sure there's not a single dust ball on the floor. So this, in addition to the logistics of it all, right? It's sort of a confined time frame in which they have to clean this place. So they have to work their schedules now around the checkouts and check-ins, whereas previously they could fit their residential clients in at any time. So the logistics were a nightmare for him, and he ended up burning through a couple of companies because it was just a mismatch. Their bread and butter was they can clean homes whenever they want, and if they had to reschedule, they'd call their client and say, "I'm going to be 3 hours late." It doesn't fly in this business. So the disconnect I saw was he wants to provide a premium product, which is housing for production and actors and things like that. But the core of sort of that transition process from guest to guest was difficult for him to uphold. So it wasn't very scalable. So our thought was, how can we plug a great tactical housekeeping, service, which could be a mom and pop business, it could be us, whatever, and pair it with this high level of service that's backed by technology, so that from a host perspective, there's no communication headaches. These guys are scheduled automatically, weeks and months in advance, so they can plan around it. From the cleaner's perspective, we tell them what to do in a simple platform. So sort of creating this managed solution would make it easier all around. And it sort of grew from there.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. From the perspective of a host who, I got into this in early 2018, basically in our own house. Like I knew the potential. I had heard of the potential, and we bought and rehabbed this house that had a walkout basement that we converted into a separate apartment. And it just worked out incredibly. The cash flow was amazing. It paid, for a big portion of our mortgage. And we were doing a lot of the cleanings ourselves because we were like, my wife was there with the kids or whatever, and she could, she had the flexibility to do that. What I didn't realize once we started scaling it into multiple properties is the checkouts tend to be on the same days, especially in the busy season. So now, if you got 6 or 7 properties, you're like, okay, well, I can work with a cleaner to kind of schedule them in the slower season. You can work with 1 or 2 cleaners to get those 6 or 7 properties done. But, once you get in the busy season, you could have 6 cleanings that all need to take place within a 4 to 5 hour window. And that's the part I didn't recognize until we really started scaling. And the bigger you get, the more cleaners you need. So it's not like you can have that mom or pop person you can depend on, because all of a sudden you need 6 of them all at once, So that's why this was really interesting to me. So can you kind of explain how the process works, like how someone comes into the platform, and then how, like, what are the services that are provided?
Yeah, so that's an interesting perspective that you have, because we see that a lot. I mean, folks get into one listing, their mom cleans it, they clean it, but once you get to 3 rentals, now it's pretty inconvenient. The checkout times, 11 o'clock on the Sunday, the kids are screaming, you got to do, soccer practice and things like that. But, and then you walk into your listing and there's a hole in the wall. You're like, my day's shot.
Yeah.
So, but then what happens is folks in that case say, oh, I need a cleaner. They grab one cleaner to clean the 3 rentals. And then by the time they get to 10 rentals, now they have this sort of hodgepodge of various independents that they're paying differently and texting differently and like all of this stuff. And it gets really messy. So the goal with the Turnify app would be to say, Kirby, you're going to go and buy 15 rentals in Austin, but you're based in Ohio. How is it that you're going to serve those guests without being there? So what you would do is you would download the Turnify app, you would load your properties, you would sync your Airbnb iCals, or maybe you use a Guesty or a Hostaway property management system. That would pull all of the checkouts into the app. So they're all on this really easy to read Twitter feed type setup. And in your case, where you're remote, you're just going to select Hire Turnify Pro on each of those properties. And what that would do is it would send a request to our onboarding team, and it would say, Kirby needs 10 rental service in Austin. We would then staff you with our own housekeeping team, and all of those checkouts are automatically scheduled for cleaning. So you don't even have to go to Austin to look at these rentals or call cleaning companies. We provide you with that staff. So all you have to do is literally on closing day, load your addresses, select us, as your cleaning provider, and then we're off to the races. But in the meantime, when you wake up on a Sunday now, instead of running to the houses to get them cleaned or calling your company in Austin to see if they're going to make it, you just open your app, and we created the dashboard so that in 30 seconds, you can understand the status of each of your homes with updated ETAs on when they're complete, real-time photos being uploaded. So we try to make it easy for you to see that stuff from your couch, 1,000 miles away.
I see. Okay. So yeah, that's what I was going to ask. So from a quality control standpoint, like one of my biggest fears as a host is like, I wake up in cold sweats, in the middle of the night thinking, oh, did I schedule that person or did they not show up? Because your whole business depends on these 5-star reviews and making these incredible experiences for guests. So the worst possible thing that could happen is they show up and the house was not clean between the last guest and this one. So, or like, it was just clean half-assed, and they walk in a kind of a messy environment. So how do you control that quality? You mentioned pictures, but how does that process actually work if I'm like...
Yeah, so the cool part about Turnify is, and I think you mentioned this earlier, is did we have the idea to create the platform when we started the company? We didn't. It took us until 18 months ago to decide to create a platform that was external and able to be used by anyone in the world, really. And really what we did is, up until that point, we had served enough guests, right? We ticked 1 million guests. We served 1 million guests across the US by the time the platform was launched. And what that means is a lot of our experience in how housekeepers operate, right? And how hosts want to operate in conjunction with their cleaners has been put into little tiny details in the application to make sure that your situation makes a lot more sense. So in terms of scheduling, we understand sort of human things happen. People get sick, people have appointments, tires go flat. This is the nature of the human existence, and you're scaling a human operation. So a lot of what we put into the application would be to promote the fact that these housekeepers, whether you're using your own or using us, are going to show up every time. So what we do is, with an auto scheduling function, for example, a lot of the commercial operators that we see work on a very sort of short-term basis in how they send their schedules, right? They're sending them to their cleaners 4 days in advance. So that cleaner can only plan 4 days in advance. But with the Turnify app, all of the checkouts that you have scheduled through the end of time are going to be scheduled for that cleaner that's assigned, so that they know in 6 weeks they have this clean. They shouldn't schedule their doctor's appointment for that day. Another function that we have in that same scheduling realm is that the housekeepers can put on a week-by-week basis what days they're not available. So, for example, if they have a doctor's appointment on Friday, they go into their housekeeper app and say, I'm not available on Friday. The system pulls that job from them and sends it to the next housekeeper that you have assigned to that house, right? So that starts to promote predictability of a schedule for a housekeeper, and it starts to bring down the chances that a last minute whatever can pop up. On the other side of the house, we're also tracking from a host perspective their performance, and one of those performance KPIs is going to be their ability to show up on time, right? So this is a report card, literally, so that you can see how they're doing in a bunch of different areas, and one of them is timeliness. So if their score starts to drop, maybe they're showing up a little bit late, we want to understand why that is. And to the flip side, when the clean is complete, the photos are really, there's only so much you can quality check remotely, right? You're not going to be able to see a dust bunny in the back corner of an all white floor. Now we do our best to make sure that those photos can show that. I mean, 30 to 35 on average is the number of high resolution photos that you'll get per cleaning. And you could see the fibers in a lot of the rugs. I mean, think about the new iPhone shooting 4 or 8K, So we try to take advantage of that. So outside of the scheduling, the quality control metrics that we provide is when those photos are submitted, if we don't have an inspector on the ground, we're going to virtually check those photos. And that virtual inspection may also include a FaceTime walkthrough, which, look, we can't see that a towel is a little bit damp in the back corner, but on a FaceTime, we can ask a housekeeper to grab that towel and tell us how it is. So we want to make sure that this quality control process is as close to someone being on site as possible if we don't have someone on site. But in the 15 cities that we service currently, we have someone physically going through these properties. So that's going to be the easiest way. But on the flip side, if you're going to use your own cleaners in Austin, you're not going to hire Turnify, which means we don't have the ability to have that control of the virtual inspection, et cetera. The photos, in addition to your checklist, are going to be the best way to do that.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And so are you guys in every market? I'm in a smaller market here in Northwest Indiana. It's not like a major city. It's an hour outside of Chicago, but would you have cleaners here in a smaller market like this?
It's possible. I mean, again, it depends on sort of the supply of the local market and things like that. But right now we are spinning up cities with even 2 or 3 rentals that have the potential to become 200 and 300 rental markets for us. So yeah, absolutely. It's a real possibility.
I see. So you're in most areas where there's a short-term rental market currently.
Yeah, so we have 15 sort of tier 1 metros, Philly, Chicago, et cetera. And in most cases, we're able to serve hosts, up to 2 and 3 hours from those major metros once we sort of plant our flag there. So if you were to come to us and say, I have this property in, located in Indiana, it's 3 hours from Chicago, it's possible that we just set up service to serve your 2 rentals, and then, 2 of your other host friends have communication issues with their current cleaners, and those guys come on board. So we want to serve as many folks as we possibly can.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Okay. One other issue, I'm just trying to think through all the problems I have and see how you can solve them for me. One other big problem that I guess it's not a problem, but it's something I haven't fully tackled yet is this inventory control. We try to make a really unique guest experience for our guests. So, we provide a bottle of wine, a bag of microwave popcorn, coupons for local wineries, a handwritten personalized note to our guest. So all that stuff is inventory stuff that we keep in a supply closet. And we have a Google sheet that, the cleaners right now that we are hiring individually notify my guest relations person. And then she puts it in a Google sheet, but it comes back kind of on me or somebody else that I get to go over to the property and fill the inventory needs. Because as much as we try to think through everything, inevitably shampoo is going to get low when we don't expect it to, because a guest just uses a whole bottle of shampoo for some reason. So do the cleaners take care of these amenity things too? Like the supply closet needs, or is it just purely cleaning?
Yeah, so it's both. Again, this is where our experience helps a lot because we understand the trials and tribulations of that. So from an app perspective, whether you're using your own cleaners in the app or you're hiring us to do your physical cleaning, the inventory section, we found that we need to make it really, really easy for a housekeeper to report this. Think about it in terms of what you require for your rentals, right? If you have a 40 or 140 point checklist, the housekeeper has a lot to do in a limited amount of time. So I would say if the reporting is where your housekeepers are missing, right? You're only finding out when shampoo is low, when your guests tell you there's none left. And then you look in your closet and there's none left in the closet. The mechanism in which you're using to report that is too many steps for your housekeepers. So one of the things that we did is when your housekeepers click start the job in the Turnify app, they go through their checklist, they take all of their photos of what you require. And maybe for you, that's going to be a picture of your welcome basket with the wine and the popcorn. So you can check that in 1 second. But at the end of that is a simple inventory screen. And what we did here was we just made it a couple of buttons. Is it out? Is it low? Is it full? Right? So all they have to do every single clean is click, it's low, it's full, it's done. It takes them half a second compared to, maybe they have a bad connection. And I know Google Sheets sometimes hates bad connections and they weren't able to load it. And then they went home and forgot about it. Right. So if you tweak that process a little bit from a housekeeper's perspective, that may solve it. It's not that they don't have the ability to report that. Do they have the ability to do something, or are they just not doing it? And I think in your case, I would look at that process to understand why are they not reporting it? Because it takes them 6 clicks. They have to access 2 platforms and then type in all of these notes. And it's too much for them after they just clean for 12 hours and they're like near death. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's largely a process thing for sure.
Got it. Okay. So they're reporting it, but they're not actually like restocking amenities. That's not part of.
In some cases, yeah. So in cases where we started service years ago, Nashville, Chicago, Philly, we have warehouses where if you hire us, we will have your linens packed with amenities, and you can buy those amenities from us. You can buy those amenities and ship them to us, whatever it is. But in any case, packing those linens with the amenities means that a full set of sheets and amenities show up to that house every single time. So yeah, in some cases we can supply those depending on the location.
Wow, nice. That's awesome. And I guess what's the difference between Turnify and some of the others that are out there? I've seen like Turnover B&B or Tidy. Like it sounds like they're similar competitors, but probably offer slightly different services.
Yeah.
What's the advantage?
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason why we created this was we've used a lot of those in our own business. I mean, when we started, we've used all of them. And there's a couple of things that we found. Largely, the reason why we created this is because we found ourselves hiring folks to click through those different platforms that you mentioned, because they were built from the perspective of okay, sure, maybe the person that created it had hotel experience, but now they're creating a platform that should empower housekeepers based on how they think housekeepers should operate their day. So in your case, you have a platform that it takes, I don't know, 3 clicks to report a damage in some of these. It's too many. The number of damages that will be reported is very low because it feels cumbersome to a housekeeper. So one of the main differentiators between sort of the scheduling platforms that are out there is that the intuitiveness of it, because all of our experience is in it. For example, if you were to find out that a guest hasn't checked out on time, at what point do you find that out? Is it in the morning before you arrive, when you enter the home?
Yeah,
Like, what would you say?
Usually, I think when the cleaners show up, I mean, I have doorbell cams, so I can check if I see them leave, but I'm not like sitting there staring at my doorbell cams all morning. So it's usually when the cleaners show up.
Exactly. So in the cases where these applications do have the ability to report like a late checkout, it's after they start the job. It's in the checklist somewhere. They're not going to be able to start that clean because the guest is still in there. Right. So what we did is there's a start job and there's a report late checkout button as soon as they arrive. So those little details make it really easy for the housekeeper to report this without them calling you while you're at church. And then you can indicate to the guest that they need to leave. So our experience in serving 1 million guests and then creating this custom platform for us to use internally, then putting it out to the world, has created a world of difference in terms of how it's used and like what our goals are. I think it's also important to note that from an app only perspective, that the platform has a focus on performance. So we talked about sort of that remote hosting, right? There's a lot of markets out there where you can get inexpensive homes and you can put guests through them. And I think I heard one guy on your one of your episodes mention that his note was $1,000 a month. He had a tenant on one side for 900. All he had to do was earn $100 a month, and Airbnb was a grand slam for him.
Yeah.
So in that case, our focus is on the performance, because if you're managing just one independent cleaner from 500 miles away or maybe even next door, you need to be able to coach them to perform better if you don't have that technical experience. So if you weren't a director of housekeeping for 25 years and your guests say to you, Kirby, this place is dirty, your first inclination is going to be to go to your housekeepers and say, housekeepers, this is dirty, fix it. For a housekeeper, it doesn't mean much. They're like, I cleaned it for 7 hours. What does dirty mean? So you need sort of that technical know-how. And, without having that, what we've done is we've implemented these scorecards, which we've learned the 12 KPIs that could potentially lead to a guest complaint. So we'll pull all of that data from the housekeepers' applications and put it onto their scorecard so that you can see that, well, Jen has a 72 out of 100, and it looks like she's showing up late and she's not uploading any photos. So something's weird here. Now you have a more pinpointed sort of, a use case on how you can approach her with those complaints. You can let her know, hey, you've got to show up on time. You've got to upload the photos so I can see my wine because guests are complaining about it. It's totally different. So the focus on performance, and all of the intuition that we put into it. And the last piece I would say is there's a lot of platforms out there that say that they provide cleaners. A lot of these platforms are like a matchmaking service. I mean, they're very similar to a staffing firm where you can go on and they may have background checked these guys, but we don't know what the level of that background check is. All right. There's 5 different versions of a background check, which if they did a local background check for the last 5 years, what happens if that person was an arsonist 8 years ago in a different state? Yeah. You're not going to know, right? So now you're matched with this random person. You have no idea what their quality of work is. And it's a really weird situation. So we differentiate ourselves in that we're not a marketplace to match you with independence. I mean, we're providing the service ourselves with the level of quality that our customers know. So that focus on quality, I think, is huge.
Nice. That whole process standpoint, I think, that you brought up is just so important. That's the whole name of the game when it comes to short-term rentals. It's just like whoever has the best process is going to win, because you can replicate great experiences over and over again. But if you don't, you're going to miss something here and there. So that's a great point. So how does the pricing model work for this?
The best part about Turnify, and right now we released the latest version on March 28th. So it's, the latest version is not even out for a month yet. It's totally free, 100% free. All of our features. Now, in the future, there will be some monthly charge per property. And we're thinking it's somewhere between $8 and $10 a month per property. So it's pretty inexpensive if you're going to use just the app with your own housekeepers, especially considering the leverage you can get from some of the features we've baked in. But the goal right now is we want hosts to use it. We have over 100 folks that are already using it in the first, 18 days that it's live. And we're just collecting feedback. We want to make it the best product it can be before we say, this is now going to be $8 a month. So the app itself is totally free. And if you go ahead and want to hire us for the cleaning, it would be, you can use the app just like you would if you weren't hiring us. And then the cleaning would just be the cost of your cleaning fee, like you would pay any other housekeepers. There's no hidden fees. It's not, your cleaning is $47. And if we have to clean one towel, it's an extra $3. And, make up an extra bed, it's $8 extra. There's no surprises, because I hate that as a consumer. So it's really straightforward.
Wow. So that's cool. I didn't realize. So there's kind of like two components of it. So you download the app, and that's got all the checklists and processes built in, which you can just start using today with your current cleaning teams. And then if you want, Turnify will source the cleaners just for the same cost of whatever they charge.
Yeah. So those are the two sides of it. And there's two use cases for that. So on the one hand, if you do buy a property and, calling and getting quotes and going through that process and then testing them, it's a heavy lift, even for one property. I mean, you may understand that part of the process. It's rough. And then it may not work out, right?
Yeah.
Now you've wasted all your time, and now you've got to clean on Sunday. So there are two use cases. So in that case, you get a new property, put it into the app, ask to hire us, and we'll staff it for you. And it takes you 30 seconds. But on the other side, what we're seeing now is a lot of these commercial operators are using sort of a more hybrid strategy. So we see folks with 1,000 units, and 500 of them, they have an internal team. So they'll mark those properties on the Turnify app as being cleaned by their internal housekeepers. But on the other side, the other 500 properties are split between vendors, cleaning companies, and independents. So they have this mix. Everyone's using different systems, and they're all being paid differently, and like everything's sort of everywhere. So the best way to think about it is, you can have a group of properties that you clean internally. You can have a group that a cleaning company cleans. You can have a group that's being cleaned by independents, and they all of that data flows through the same dashboard. So we try to consolidate that.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And you mentioned payments then too. So once they're done and they click that they're done, is there a payment processing through Turnify, or how does that invoicing work?
Yeah, so if you're going to use your own cleaners, the payments portion of that is coming soon. So we're about 2 weeks out from that being processed. But again, we find that's a pain point, because all of the independents out there like to be paid on different payment apps, and you've got to track it, and it's crazy. So we're looking to do that. Yeah, when they're done with the clean, or on a weekly basis, like on a Friday, they get a payout in their account. That's what we're looking to do. So you don't have to touch it at all. You just kind of enter what you'll pay them, and then it will pay them out.
Man, that would be great. Yeah. That's been my experience. Every new cleaner that we've hired, it seems like, has a different process where they invoice me, or they want to be paid right afterwards, or some say I'll be paid every 2 weeks, and it's all Zelle, PayPal, Stripe, like all the different payment platforms that you can think of. There's a different preference for. So it's a lot of again, the more you can just streamline that part of it, just saves so much time. And, people are getting paid the right thing. Cause I'm always worried, like, did I forget to pay somebody? And then, if it's my mother-in-law, who's one of our cleaners, she probably wouldn't even say anything, and then I'm the jerk who didn't pay her. So, so
it'll be an awkward Thanksgiving if you forget to pay mom.
Exactly. In the back of her mind, that $100 that I never paid her. So yeah, that's great. That's cool that's coming, man. It sounds like this is an awesome platform. So let's see there. So I am always curious people's perspective who's been in this industry for a while, because I'm fairly new to it. I've been doing long-term rentals for a long time, but just kind of transitioned my company to short-term rentals over the last couple of years. And I feel like it's the most profitable way you can rent properties. I mean, when you look at the cash flow and you're making 3 times to 4 times as much in some cases as you can make on the exact same property as a long-term rental, I'm like, this is insane. But I think it's because it's not commoditized. Like you were saying, like the pure form of it was like just a cool experiences, come sleep on my couch. Now it's becoming more and more corporate, I guess, or commoditized. So do you see that continuing? Like, what are some of the changes you see coming? And do you think this opportunity is going to be here for a long time? Or is it like, just like, got to get in now and things will be a lot different in the coming years?
Yeah, I think both of your questions are a yes, right? So do I think that it will continue to become more commercialized? Absolutely, without question. I think a lot of the sort of shaky business models were exploited by COVID. I think you saw a lot of operators that were burning millions of dollars per year to support these leases. It just wasn't sustainable. But think about it. I think at this point, more than 50% of Airbnb's listings are professionally managed or have some kind of commercial sort of tag to them. So I think that will continue to increase, and I think there's a need for it. I think many of these commercial operators can provide experiences that a traditional hotel cannot. But I also think there's a lot of operators out there that don't have the ability to provide an experience that's better than what folks can get at Janie's Cabin or the local Marriott, right? So there's sort of a disconnect there. So I think the top players in that space that are providing the best experience, whatever that may be, it's a unique locale with some funky furniture and something you can take a selfie and put on Instagram in. I think those guys will thrive. I think that portion will grow, and I think we'll start to see more of those apart hotels come up. I do think on the other side, though, we're coming around to a point where what we call a residential host, which has less than 5 properties, they run everything themselves. I think that is a really great niche to be in, because there's a lot of sort of power flowing back to that sector, right? So before COVID, it was different. The apart hotels were the best place to stay in, and they had the kitschy pool decks and things like that. They're still great, but I think there's a certain character around staying in someone's house now that has been professionally cleaned, that's sort of COVID safe. And I think folks want to do that. They want to get back to that, especially with the drive-to traffic. So I think that sort of pure form of Airbnb will be totally delineated from the commercial side of Airbnb, whether that shows in the OTAs themselves or not. But I think both will continue to grow, and I think it's here to stay no matter what the local jurisdictions say, even though some are tougher than others. I think it's a great opportunity on whatever side of the house. But from a listener perspective, if anyone is out there sort of looking to get into either side of this, running the financials first is going to be crucial. A lot of folks do see your point and say, I can 3X this long-term rental I've had for 20 years. Heck yeah, sign me up. But in most cases, the sort of core financial model behind that property is not yet strong enough to support that. So they may find themselves getting into a pinch, 6 months or a year later when occupancy dips, because there's a there's a block on a border, right? Or there's some travel restrictions, or God forbid COVID 47 happens. I mean, who knows, right? So putting those numbers on paper to say, this is what my note is, here's all of my utilities, some maintenance costs, I'll run that out for a couple of years. Because otherwise, where are you going to steal margin from? You know, where we see it being taken from? The cleaning. You know, folks have $100 cleaning fee. They need 60% of that to support their margins, because maybe their pricing strategy wasn't set up correctly from the get-go, or maybe their FF&E and OS&E costs are through the roof and they didn't forecast this, or they needed a new floor. I mean, all kinds of situations. So operators will then look to the cleaning fee, which means you've got to get cheaper cleaners. You've got to push that cost down to continue to stay afloat. And it's just this death spiral that we see folks go through. So there's a lot that goes into it, but the planning up front, it's really incredibly important.
Yeah, that is such great advice. Annualizing out those costs, because I think most markets are seasonal, you know, and so you've got that high season and low season, and the high season, it is crazy how good the cash flow is, but the low season it's a big dip, and a lot of people, I don't think, annualize it out. They just take a portion and say, well, I think it's going to be this. And you really got to look at both sides of it, and make sure every cost is in there. You know, you're cutting the grass now, your tenant's not doing that. You're paying for the internet, you know, all these different things that are costs. So it's not just like all sunshine and roses, but I agree. I tend to agree with you. Like, it's going to continue to be more commercial, but I always advise people to look at their competitive advantage, and then, you know, what can you do better than the big guys? Because, you know, like in my market, I feel like my market's kind of like the perfect place for this, because no hedge fund's going to come in and invest $1 billion in Michigan City, which is where I'm at. You know, it's too small. You can't do it. It's too small of a market. They could do that in Chicago pretty easily, into properties and scale a huge business. But the competitive advantage is, I know Michigan City really well, and I offer the experience that a hedge fund's never going to be able to offer. They're in New York. They've never stepped foot in that city, you know? So I think thinking through that to where it could be commoditized or, you know, commercialized. But you as the operator always have that advantage over a giant corporation, because you can do these things that they just can't do at scale.
And to some degree, I mean, I think about the competitive landscape, and I think why would you look to an apart hotel that's managed by a Sonder or one of these guys that has 40,000 rentals as your competition? I mean, they're pulling from the same guest pool, but the number of travelers is so high that for you just to do the best that you can with what it is you have, if you have a cabin, if you have, you know, something, I mean, just run that route, you know, and produce the best product that you possibly can, market it as best as you can. But you can't always look to those big guys and say, you know, how am I going to compete against this apart hotel with a rooftop pool? It's not in the same category. You know, and there's a lot of bonuses to being in that space, which is, I have a home, I'm going to put a hanging chair in the corner because that's going to drive more clicks to my listing. And I'm going to create a more homey environment than what these guys can get. So there's a lot to be said about, sort of on a per rental basis, how you should go about sort of attacking it and pulling in the folks that you're trying to reach. But I wouldn't drown yourself in fears that you're going to get crushed by these local, you know, giant companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice, man. So much good information here. I am definitely going to dive deeper into Turnify and start, you know, testing it out and using it. I'd encourage others to do the same. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I mean, you can't beat the cost of the platform. So, you know, and I'm not even an affiliate. So, you know, this is free information here. So, but I appreciate what's the best way for people to start with it or get more information?
Yeah, so if you wanted to just go ahead and load a property and check it out with your own teams, or just kind of play around with it at home, just go into the Apple App Store, the Google Play Store. You could search for Turnify in there. You can go to turnify.com and sign up through the website. So whatever makes the most sense. If you have specific questions or you want a demo, maybe that's based on your specific scenario, you could just reach us at support@turnify.com or drop us a line on the website, and one of our onboarding folks will be able to help you out with that. So check it out. I mean, it's worth the couple of minutes to see if it can improve your day to day. I guarantee that it will, because it was a labor of love to put it together, and we put a lot of our ideas into it.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for spending the time, and I want to stay connected as this continues to grow. And it sounds like it's an awesome platform, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Kirby. And if anybody out there has any questions at all, we're always willing to help first and foremost, because we know there's always burning questions, especially from our side of the house. So thanks a lot for the time today.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.